Hello and welcome back. We're going to talk about Chapter 3, which is the conversation of configuring your HTML websites and web pages with color, text, and cascading style sheets, otherwise known as CSS. To get started, I'm going to ask that you log into your Canvas course, scroll down to the current module for Chapter 3, and at the end of the module, locate the Chapter 3 Trillium Student V2 zip. When you download this file, it's going to come down as a zip file, and we're going to want to make sure that you extract it. Now, in a Windows PC environment, you're going to want to right-click and choose Extract All Files. I'm on a Mac, so on a Mac, all we simply need to do is double-click on it, or I believe you can always go into this menu right here and look for Extract Files. I don't even see it here. Yeah, so anyway, on a Mac, it's just simply a double-click, and it will extract it for you. So nonetheless, inside this folder, you'll see that there are two files in here. The first thing we want to do is actually open up the index.html file in your text editor. So if you've got Notepad++, or if you're using a different editor on a Mac, whatever that may be, let's just stay away from Dreamweaver or other WYSIWYG tools. We want to keep it pretty basic and simple, so we want to stay away from some of those larger platforms and tools. So I'm going to right-click on top of this file and choose Open With. And I just started using a different text editor today. We're going to try out Tinkta. So let's give this a try. So we'll open this up, and again, if you have Notepad++, that's what you want to select to open it back up. Furthermore, while we still have this file here, we're going to come back to your folder here and select it by left-clicking on it once, right-click on it and choose Open With, and choose Google Chrome. Alright, so here's where the file looks like in Google Chrome. You can see it looks okay. Basically, without even looking at the code, we probably have a couple headings going on where we see the text is already sized and bold. There's another heading and possibly the same heading down here. We won't really know until we go into looking at the actual HTML code. Also, we can probably see that there's a navigation happening right here, a nav I should say, and then we also have an unordered list right there. So let's get started on CSS. So I'm also going to have open my PowerPoint file as a means of staying on track, and also something that you can refer to or follow along with or take notes in should you download the PowerPoint and want to take notes inside of there. So anyway, this chapter again is all about adding style, color, and enhancing your web pages using CSS, also known as cascading style sheets. Throughout this chapter, we're going to talk about an embedded style sheet, external style sheet, and inline styles and the differences between them, and how useful the cascade effect of cascading style sheets really is. So one of the first things I do with my students when we're in person is I encourage them to go out to the CSS Zen Garden. So I'm going to click on this link. Let's see if it'll work for me. All right, let's go to CSS Zen Garden. The CSS Zen Garden is basically a website that utilizes the same HTML file for all of the designs. So you can download the HTML file right here. It is open source, like all HTML is. But in this case, you're given permission to download it and try to tinker with the CSS files that go with it. So in short, students at a university were given a challenge of utilizing the HTML file provided by their professor and change the look and feel of the website. So you can see on this one as I scroll up and scroll down, there's trees in the background that are not moving, okay, they're static. The actual opacity of this color block is semi-transparent, so we're seeing the trees behind there. Likewise, as we continue to scroll down, we've got some cool pictures and images, and then we've got some links at the bottom right here. And so basically, if I were to click on any one of these links, let's go with garments. When I click on garments, it's going to take me to another rendition of the exact same HTML file, but it's this student's interpretation of CSS for that file. So likewise, once again, if you go back in my video and or on this website, you'll see it's the exact same HTML for each of the pages, but the overall look and feel is drastically different based on the cascading style sheets. And so you can kind of see this is happening again. And once again, at the very bottom is where the student has the link to garments, which is where we're at, and maybe we'll click on screen filler this time, just to give you some different ideas of what these look like. So here on the right side of this particular rendition of this website, we've got screen filler here, garments there. So once again, exact same HTML file, all the links are the same, but the CSS is drastically different. And so you can see what this person's rendition of it looks like. So that's the idea behind CSS, is that we really don't need to get into your HTML code at all. We can do everything we want to do to make a page look pretty by simply using CSS. Some might say, well, some of these websites have images, and that's true, some of them do, and we can actually put the images into the CSS and have it talk to the containers that are inside of the HTML. So it all can be done without even touching the HTML code at all. Okay, so this is the robot one. So you can kind of see he popped up. The fact that he popped up at the very beginning is a neat little HTML5 technique, and the spinning animation behind there again is utilizing animated GIFs, which again is able to be done with HTML5. And actually this might be done just simply with the CSS doing a transition, which we get into very little bit at the end of the semester, and it's something we dive much more deeply into in the CIS 221 Advanced CSS course. So anyway, that takes you through CSS Zen Garden. I encourage you to check it out if you ever wanted to dig a little deeper to see how people are doing various things. All right, let me go back to where we were at here and make this nice and big again. I like this that it's down here in the bottom right corner, but I want to make sure that it doesn't take up too much space. All right, back to where we're at. All right, so that was the CSS Zen Garden. So the idea behind cascading style sheets, if you're still unclear to the purpose of it, is that we can take the HTML code that we've designed for, let's say, a PC or a full-on screen, and change the look and feel of it for different sized displays, such as tablets or iPads, and we can change it yet again for iPhones and smartphones and Android phones, etc., based on the resolution size. We also can leave the content of your website just the way it is, but we can also say, you know what, visually, this unordered list would look better on the right-hand side versus the left-hand side. But we're not going to sit here and put a bunch of space bars right in the code and move it over, because that's not going to work. So we have different ways of adjusting the placement of different items to get exactly where we want it to go with exact colors and layouts that we've chosen. So the idea behind CSS is that we can cascade it, in that I might have a grandeur CSS for my whole website, and as I dig deeper into sub areas, such as in perspective, if we were to have a main CSS for JJC, then let's say the fine arts department wanted to have a little change or different spin on the look and feel. They could still use the main JJC CSS file, but yet tinker and modify some of the different layouts, colors, fonts, etc. in the fine arts department. You might even find that if you go to JJC's website and check out the bookstore is basically done just that. They use JJC's main template and main CSS, but yet they've modified it enough where it doesn't really follow the same exact layouts that we have on the other pages. So they're using a different CSS over it to cascade on top of it. All right, so let's move on. Why do we use CSS versus just simply putting different styles into our HTML code? Well, let's take you back a few years, probably like a decade or so, if not more ago. We used to put inside of our HTML code these tags that were called font, right? We would say font, type, equals, and then we would say Times New Roman, and whatever it was, right? And then we would say, we would close this off, and then we would say font size equals 12 pixels, okay, etc., etc. So we would continue to add in all these different types of tags, so to speak, and then we'd have to close all of them, right? So in short, I could probably put close this font tag, and close this font tag. And really, it's starting to add a lot of content to my web page that now my browser has to render through this as it's displaying this information to the screen. And you as a developer and I as a developer want to look at this and be like, where is the code that I'm looking for? And I don't want to get kind of sidetracked with all of this stylizing data inside the HTML. So we say, you know what, let's get rid of it out of the HTML. And in fact, the font tag is deprecated. So don't think that that's a great tag you can still use. The browsers don't recognize it anymore and it's not supposed to be used. But we basically say let's use one style sheet, and then all pages within our website can look identical. So when Trillium on the right side over here has another web page called Services, we can have a very similar look and feel on both of these pages without me having to go into this index page and put font tags, and then go into the services page and then add in font tags there. So hopefully we just have one CSS file and all pages can link to it and utilize our stylized content from there. It also makes it really easy for us to make updates across the whole website. So for example, back in the day when I was working for a large company for a bank, they had wanted a website done in a bluish color. And so I did the whole website with a very neutral blue themed color, and they loved it. All is great. Then they said, you know what, we've got another project for you. We want you to work on this HR website. Kind of taking the same spin as to what I did in the previous website, but change the colors up a little bit. We still want it to be natural looking, but maybe not blue. Maybe go with like a different color. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I went through and changed all the different references to this blue color and made it into like a cranberry, like dark, deep red color. And I showed my boss and I was like, hey, what do you think? This is what I'm thinking. You know, it took me a long time to change all of those tags to reference the blue to this cranberry color. And I think by me saying cranberry, it kind of threw him for a little spin there. And he was like, I don't know about cranberry. This isn't going to be ideal to what our clients are looking for. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So then I tried a different color and, you know, went with a deeper yellow. And he's like, I don't know. I think you're closer with the cranberry, but let's go back to something like that, but a different color. And mind you, I'm dating myself 15 plus years ago, that we only had 216 web safe colors to choose from. So it's not like I could just go into a color spinner and choose a different color. I actually had to use one of 216 web safe colors. So your shades of cranberry were somewhat limited. All right, fast forward. I went back and I undid all my changes, and I went back to the original cranberry color that I'd mentioned, except when I explained it to him, this time I used the word burgundy. And I said, you know, I think this burgundy color is probably what you're looking for, less so than the cranberry. And he's like, absolutely, I really like the burgundy color. Now, the moral of the story isn't so much that I undid it and re-showed the exact same thing the second time or the third time. But the moral of the story is that on all these web pages, and there were like 150 web pages, I had to go through and change every single instance to the hexadecimal code for that color. However, if I had one CSS file, I could have made the changes very easily in one document all at one time, and boom, you would see the changes. So we're going to go through that process today, and hopefully by the end of this chapter, you'll remember this story and have a greater understanding of what I'm trying to explain on the benefits of CSS. All right, so there's different types of cascading style sheets. There's inline styles, embedded styles, external, and imported. If you're going to go with an inline style, basically it means that, like you saw me do just a moment ago, I would put a style directly inside or in line of the HTML code. Now this does not give me scalability. It doesn't give me cascading. It only is going to affect this index page. So it's not really ideal. We try to avoid using inline styles as much as possible because, again, it limits to what cascade effects we can actually apply to it. Furthermore, let's say that I had, let's give this H2 an ID, which you'll find out what that means in just a minute, and we're just going to call it test. So if I give this particular H2 an ID of test, in my CSS file, I also have an ID for test that I applied elsewhere. It's not going to cascade down because this one's going to take the inline style over the external style sheet. Okay? All right, so let me take that back out. Embedded styles. Now we're going to do a lot of embedded styles to get started today. And those basically are styles that sit just on this index page. Now you might say, well, that doesn't make sense because if it's only in the index page, the services page won't have it, and you are absolutely correct. So what we'll do is we're going to do the embedded styles so you see what it looks like and build up our pages here. And then by the end of this chapter, we're going to cut everything out of this index page, paste it into its own external style that you see listed here, and then we will link both the index as well as the services page to our now external styles. Okay, what you never ever want to do is put an embedded style on this document right here on index and copy and paste the embedded style into services, so that way it in theory does work, but if I make one change to the index page CSS, I have to remember to go to the services embedded CSS and make the same change. So we want to avoid doing that as much as possible. We want to make sure that we use external styles as much as possible. And then lastly is imported styles. This is a little bit more advanced than what we're going to get into in this particular course. Know that they exist. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. It just takes it to another level of advanced CSS. So it is very similar to external styles, but there's a little bit more ordering in the process that you go through to get those to work. All right. So that being said, the inline styles, as I just said, is going to go directly into the HTML. The embedded is going to go into the head section within a styles tag. Okay. External styles are going to, if you look up here on the far left side, I already have a link to it, what we're going to call our CSS. So that's how we're going to access it. And then every single page, home, services, contact, we'll utilize this exact same URL that we have right, or this exact same link href that we have right here, and they will all link to the same CSS. All right, so what does CSS even look like? So the first thing is this, the selector is referring to the tag in which you're going to modify, okay? So for this particular example right here, the selector is going to be on the body. Well, now we know in HTML the body is the very first tag that we need to have there. We always have to have it there, and there's only one per page. So you can't have a body here, another body down here, another body down here. It happens immediately after you close the head. You open up the body. And so we're saying right here, the declaration is the next thing right here. In this declaration property, there's a list of them to choose from. You cannot make them up. So color is referring to the font color. You can't put font color, you simply put the word color, colon. Now color, colon, no spaces, and it's up to you if you want to put a space after the colon before the value or no space at all. That's up to you. And this is the declaration value. So we're going to add this to our page. So if you would, come over to your index page. Underneath where it says link, or at the end of the line that says link, for us it's line 6, we're actually going to create ourselves a style tag, S-T-Y-L-E, and then with all tags that you open, you always want to remember to close them. Now if you forget to close the style tag, your page pretty much will be broken. It just won't work because you're in the head section and the body is never actually being triggered, so the browser will oftentimes think that you're always just developing styles, which is never visual to the browser. It's all back end for the DTD to kind of render through. So keep that in mind as we're going through that. We want to make sure we open and close the style tag. All right, now that we are inside the style tag, we're going to create our first style. So the tag or the selector is going to be body, and then we'll put in a curly brace. Now the curly brace is unique to CSS. We don't have curly braces in HTML, and I believe the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, did this on purpose to really separate and designate different syntax for different languages. HTML, as you can see, is using brackets, the greater than and less than, and the CSS is using curly braces, okay? So we're going to open up this style with a curly brace, and then we're going to say color, colon, blue. And then we'll put a semicolon there, and let's basically just press Control S or Command S depending on your tool, your platform, and then come over to your web page and refresh. And you should see immediately that your CSS is automatically updating all of the font on your web page to blue. Pretty cool, right? All right, so let's go through and say, you know, sometimes we want multiple things to happen to our body. So I don't have to repeat this whole line. In fact, because I put that semicolon at the end of the word blue, it terminates that line. And I'm going to press the enter key, and I'm going to press it twice to kind of separate. I'm all about indenting, okay? If you indent, you'll have a greater understanding of which tags are opened and closed and which ones are closed properly, etc. All right, so let's go with the background color. So background dash color, colon, and let's put yellow, okay? And so when it comes to CSS, you'll see right here, as we just stated, that background dash color. When it comes to your declarations, okay, so your declaration is going to be this property right here. If there are two words to basically describe that declaration, CSS will have a dash in between. You cannot have a space between background and color. It's got to be a dash. This is the minus sign, the dash. It's not an underscore, and there's, again, no spaces. And once again, syntax wise, you should always keep those connected. Don't have a space between color and the colon. All right, and then it's up to you if you want to put a space between the colon and the value. All right, so let's save this, Control S and save, and come back over here and refresh, and now you'll see that the yellow is in play. All right, so that's pretty cool. We're seeing immediate feedback, and once again, I do enjoy having my text editor on one side and my browser on the other, and I never close out of this window. I'm always just refreshing. It makes development go much, much quicker. All right, so this is a rather unattractive page at this point, but I wanted to show you some of the quick ways just to make modifications to the body. So let's come back to the style over here, and actually, you know what? I scratched that. My apologies. We could also, what I wanted to say is use what's called a hexadecimal color value. So you'll see right here where the body says color equals blue, it gave us this blue. Now, again, back to my story about 10 or 15, 20 years ago when I had to use a blue color, or I only had 216 colors to work with. Those are web-safe colors. It limits the colors that you can use. So the fact that we have what's called hexadecimal values, it allows us to really kind of modify the way our colors are shaded a little differently. So if you can see what we have right here, it says 0000FF. Now the way this works, because it's hexadecimal, is that there are 16 digits, okay? So if you can imagine, we're going to go from 0 to 9. And actually, I don't really have a good screen for this, but let me just type this out. So 0, 1, 2, oh, I don't mean to do it that way. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So there's 16 digits right here, okay? And so web-safe colors, the 216 that I just mentioned, basically says that there's going to be a red, a green, and a blue. Okay, so these values combined together is going to give us our unlimited number of colors, basically. But in the world of 216 web-safe colors, the first two are always going to be a 0, a 3, a 6, a 9, a C, or an F. Okay, so you can kind of see I counted every 3 over. So if you want to have a lot of red color, we're going to go full on red, which means it's going to be FF. Okay, an absence of color is 0. Kind of makes sense, right? And if you want no green, we're going to put 0, 0. And if you want no blue, we'll put 0, 0. Okay, so now if I were to modify this background color to hashtag FF0000, my background color is going to turn red. So let's check that out. Perfect, right? Likewise, if I were to explain this a little differently, let's say we want kind of greenish color, but not too much, not greenish color, but you want a varying level of green inside of there. If we change that green 00 to, let's say, 66, oops, 66, then I would change this value up here to FF6600. Save it and refresh, and then you'll see what color it is. It's like an orangish color. So adding a little bit of green into a very red color gives you an orange color. So this process of doing web-safe colors basically says, once again, it's always doing 2 characters or numbers, 2 digits, for red, for green, for blue, and they have to come from 00, 336699CC or FF. And any combination of those that I just mentioned in units of 2 will give you a web safe color. Now fast forward, our devices are amazing. Our monitors and resolutions and retinas scans and the displays are amazing. So we don't really need to worry too much about web safe colors. That being said though, it does give you a good idea of the ballpark of what I just mentioned, and if you modify slight colors along the way, you'll start changing the overall outcome of the color that you've chosen. All right, so that being said, let's see where we're at. So the last thing I wanted to say about that is that I did mention that you have to have a hashtag in front of it. In order for the browser to recognize that you're typing in not random letters and numbers between 0 and 9 and A through F, it needs to know that you want a hashtag in front of it, and that will designate the fact that it's a hexadecimal value identifying a color. In the back of your textbook, you'll see that there's definitely different charts that are available for you to look at to see what different values go with. Throughout the chapter 3 as well, there are different links that you can click on, and I encourage you to do so to allow you to click on a color and it will tell you what the hexadecimal value is, or if you know what color you are looking for, you can choose the hexadecimal value based on that. All right, so I'm going to take this code out of the bottom here because obviously it's not going to work for me. I was just showing you, demonstrating you how we figured that out. So I'm going to Control X to cut those out, save this file, and I don't think I made any changes, but here we are. So I'm going to take a brief pause, and if you need to take a break, now's a great time, and then come back and join me for the second version or second part of this video.